When thinking of a high school or middle school English course, what does your mind go to? Is it Shakespeare, Whitman, Thoreau, maybe Fitzgerald, or St. Clair? Were the voices of white men of the past the focus, or did you hear voices of those from a different background than yours? Did you ever read Emma Chetto, Ralph Ellison, or maybe S. Alice Callahan? The answer to that last question is probably no, and it has to do with the skewed form of history taught to us in both English and history classrooms across the nation and even locally.
Whitewashing is something that is very prevalent in the American education system, and it is primarily done in our history and literature curriculums. This is exemplified through the fact that, according to Bob Peterson in Whitewashing Our Past, even though publishers make claims about being multicultural and honoring our nation's diversity, none of the 5th grade United States history textbooks, even those exceeding 800 pages, examines the role of racism in U.S. history, or even mentions the word racism. As textbooks provide little truth, through raw literature written by diverse individuals, we can exploit the truth and inform our students. As future educators or future parents, it is vital that we all understand the importance of a diversified curriculum. If you have a child and his or her school refuses to teach them through the voices of other cultures and viewpoints, you must bridge that gap on your own. If you are a teacher, work towards a classroom that promotes anti-racism through a culmination of ethnically diverse readings. In the words of Dr. Kyle Ciani, a history professor at Illinois State University, visibility of prominent white leaders allows for certain histories to be taught, but many more to be silenced.
Some people may claim that the current curriculum includes classics that every high school student in America should read. However, there is so much more to the American culture and a wider range of individuals than is being represented in the classroom. In 2020, it is now more important than ever to meet the ethical standards of representation, and it starts with active discussion in a classroom setting.
Taking our research into account, whether that be through our interviews, outside resources, or even our own experiences in school, we took these and decided to create a lesson plan that kind of shows how diversity can be achieved in a high school setting. The steps for a lesson plan go as follows. First, educate for empowerment. Second, know how to talk about race and actively practice ideals of anti-racism. Third, capture the unseen or what isn't mentioned about our history. Fourth, resist simple storytelling by diving deep into all aspects of a story rather than just focusing on a single story, as Ms. Siddiqui warns in her TED Talk. And fifth, connect to the present by uplifting new perspectives of the past. We can uplift new voices to enact change in the present. This is how we keep history from repeating its racist patterns.
With books such as Invisible Man, Beloved, Wanima, and poems such as Brown Girl Manifesto or The Song of the Feet, all written by primarily women of color, the curriculum is still American, but more inclusive and representative. In other words, there's more to American literature. These pieces of literature all either dive deep into the real troubles and experiences of minorities in America from the perspective and written by people who fall into these groups.
To meet expectations, the teacher would then introduce important literary devices throughout the provided literature and create comprehensive quizzes, just as the current curriculum. They could assign a student to write a personal identity poem based on the poetry read in the class. And at the end of the unit, they could include a project, essay, film, song, painting, etc., showing what it means to be a minority in America and highlighting possible anti-racist efforts. Having a deeper understanding of what growing up in a whitewash education system can do to your perception of the education system is crucial to understanding why this topic is even relevant in 2020. As an African American student who has experienced both living in the US and Africa, the dysphoria experienced by learning a curriculum that is not only biased, but actively excludes against you is tough. We must do better to erase this educational gap of racist ideals and undertones from the education system, not only for past generations, but for future generations. To look more into the class of English 238, we see the use of rhetoric to help give a more holistic view of an issue or argument. When we look into American history taught in the US, we miss that mark. Instead of using rhetoric to help gain understanding, it is used to paint a certain image of the US history. When we look at rhetorical term conjuncture, we see that people can misuse this tool to fit their agenda. People believe conjunctures are true because they fit into or affirm their worldview. This quote was taken from Ancient Rhetorics, published in 2012 by Sharon Crowley and Deborah Hawkey.
In predominantly white classrooms, when learning about race and race-related issues, students of color sometimes feel like tools for white students to learn from instead of feeling like the learning is centered around them.
Real quick, I'd like to thank Hannah for allowing me to conduct an interview and for her insight. But moving on, we're looking at a quote by Dr. Ursula Orr at Arizona State University. And given this quote, if we put an end to the whitewashing of education, we will in turn be able to respect the roots and history of people of color and therefore become one step closer toward being actively anti-racist. It is important to connect to the present, help students understand that they must contextualize what happened in the past to create a better world in the future, and that the legacies of historical events remain. If they examine the goals and tactics of the civil rights movement, they'll see that the same issues related to race, class, and gender are present today. A great place to start is to have students compare the activism of the past to contemporary movements such as Black Lives Matter. If students are not taught the reality of racism in the United States, we grow up extremely misinformed. This can cause children to grow into people who contribute to the system, allowing the cycle to continue. We need to put an end to the whitewashing of our education.